you wanted to go.
No, I think that's a good one. I like that. But let's get started with the conservative position on homosexuality.
Okay,
So,
so
what is the conservative position on
ah,
homosexuality?
I I don't
It's
know
a
that there
sin, I
necessarily
guess.
is one.
Well, I mean,
Well, that would be the argument if you were, I'm trying to think of how to put it. If you were really just testing the Christian position, and actually it's not even, I don't even think it's that anymore.
well, and I guess that's part of it is like given that conservatism in this country is largely based around Christianity, um, it's sort of the what is sort of the appropriate, like how should you deal with homosexuality? Like what is the appropriate response given how much we have seen that we have clearly gone too far with the LGBTQ stuff. Like that has gone too far. So how far back do we have to go? And a lot of people are pointing out that I mean, like you could say, oh, it's just the T and the Q, but if you look at it and you look at like Pride Parade, you go back years and it was always very debaucherous.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that was an argument from conservatives for decades as far as this being a slippery slope whenever you start opening things up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, everybody said, no, no, that's not the case. That's never going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And what we're seeing play out in real time is that that absolutely is the case, is that's exactly what's happened. It's gone just I mean, you talk about, yeah, pride parades. Sure, we had a pride parade, or I said we, like the country, there was a pride parade in the country in what, San Francisco?
Yeah.
Okay, where else? Like you didn't see them across the country, just in certain locales, right?
Yeah, I mean they're everywhere now. They used to be
And
like San Francisco, and then I think New
right,
York, and then I think Chicago and Seattle, and
and now you're small town America,
now it's everywhere. Like
right?
everybody's
Like,
going to have a pride parade.
right.
Um, and I mean I think it's just run away. It hasn't, and it's clearly a problem. Like you got the sexualizing of kids just everywhere around this stuff. Like if you say stay away from our kids and stop sexualizing, they call you a bigot
Right.
because they know they need to get to your kids in order to get whatever it is they want, and so which I can only assume is more sexualization and debauchery.
I mean, like, there's an argument to be made that, you know, they don't have kids, so they have yours, right?
Right. That
And
doesn't
so
make
it's preparing from a very young age, also known as grooming,
right.
that to make this normalized for everybody to just say, yeah, okay, we do this. This is the thing. It's okay to do. And like I don't agree with that, but
I mean, but I think at the very least, if they're not pedophiles, they are the vanguard for pedophiles.
yeah, I'm not sure what else you would call them other than pedophiles, to be honest. I mean,
Well,
who else wants
pederasts, technically, because it's
who?
erotic love, not philic love. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So we can argue over semantics, but I mean, like the reality is why do you want to talk to children about sexuality and sexual stuff? That just doesn't, I mean, like conservatives don't talk to children about that kind of stuff. Like that's not a thing,
well,
right?
I think the reality is it's because they're perverted. They're because literally they're perverted. Their way they look at the world is against the natural order. So in order to change it, they need to intervene. So their argument, I think, is that they need to get them young so that they could explain this stuff to them before normalcy works its way into them. So they need to intervene and show them the queer lifestyle before they adopt a normal lifestyle, basically.
Sure. And I can see that argument. But I would say, trying to think of how to put this. I, I don't know that that there's a good answer there, or that I have the right answer. I would say that a lot of it has to do with, you know, catching them young. It allows you to imbue them with your worldview rather than their parents. Because let's be real, children spend like you see this whenever you see teachers in the class that are teaching
Right.
this kind of stuff. They spend way more time as a general rule with their teachers than they do with their parents. And
Yeah.
that's a fault of the parents, right? That's a fault
Oh,
of
sure.
conservative, like, and you see it, I mean, across the board. Yeah, and I would say that as a general rule across, most of conservatism, most people have zero problems with the homosexuality aspect. Like they're like, look, what two adults do behind closed doors is not my business, and they don't want to get involved, and they don't think that it's okay to get involved, and so they just go, no, it is what it is, right?
Hmm.
Um, and it's a lot of like, you do you, but just like I don't want you, spreading your information to my kids. Like I don't want
Right.
you talking to my kids about it.
If you want to
But
teach my kids math and only
but what
math, that's fine.
but what
But
adults do is like it's none of my business, right?
sure.
And I think that's where the major pushback that we've seen lately is coming from. Is it's
Sure.
whenever it's pushing to kids,
Oh, absolutely.
and I don't know that it has anything to do with the uh, you know just the trans deal or anything like that. I think it's across the board, um, and it may actually stem back to uh, COVID and what was going on then, where people started seeing what their kids were learning in schools because they were doing Zoom classes from the home, right? So they're
Sure.
seeing what their kids are being taught. They're seeing what the teachers are saying to them, and that's where you initially saw the pushback was in that.
Right.
And I think it has really woken people up to the fact that, well, shit, maybe I need to be paying more attention to what's going on in my children's world. And so
Sure.
the pushback that you didn't see before, I think that may be why you're seeing it now.
Oh, yeah, that's why you're seeing it now. But I think there's a lot of conservatives are now looking into this and like looking like how this start? Where is this? Where is the line we need to push back to? Because this has gone too far and we need to push it back. And we're in unacceptable territory right now. So the question is, how far back do we push it? Because there's some concern that we'll push it all the way back into, you know,
The
the
1950s.
yeah, like smear the queer type shit. Um,
Really, that's
and
just a
it
game. That has nothing to do with anything. Um, no, I mean, like, yeah, there's some. I think there's some valid, you know, concerns about that, right? But the
so
question is like, what do you actually do? How does that? How do you approach it, right? And I think a lot of people are going to have to figure out on their own, what do I truly believe, and
well, that's
what am I willing to fight for? Because
well,
that's
that's
going to
kind of
be what it's going to be.
well, that's kind of what I'm that's a lot what I'm asking right now. It's like, what is where is the line basically? Because um, I mean, I look at it like I think gay marriage was a mistake. Now, I totally respect the rights of gay people to like want to visit their partner in the hospital or whatever, but the arguments I've seen that were kind of convincing was basically talking about how when by opening up gay marriage, what you do is you undermine marriage. You just opened it up a lot and you started to assault the foundation of it. And I think the weakening of the institution of marriage has been a disaster in this country.
Sure.
But I,
Well,
I
and the
look at
question then becomes, did the institution of marriage get weakened by opening up to gay marriage, or do you think it got weakened more by the institution of no-fault divorce?
Well, I think no fault divorce was far more damaging. Um, but I think we need to strengthen it as much as we can. I think I mean, we've seen that no fault divorce has probably been one of the single most disastrous social changes in this country. At least in my opinion. So while it's like that's dropping a nuclear bomb on the civilization, gay marriage might be dropping a normal bomb. We still shouldn't do it. Um, the
What if
now
you, what if, what do you think? Just a thought subject or a thought experiment is, what do you think things would look like if you left gay marriage in place and just took no fault divorce off the table?
I think it would. I think it improve drastically. I think you would see a major aversion back to the norm, but I think over time, what you would see is they would hammer at other perversions of marriage, so that marriage can be, you know, the you start to expand what can and can't be married. Like, well, okay, why can't it be married to multiple people?
Right?
Why can't multiple people enter into a three-way marriage? Why can't, and you just start to expand the concept of marriage. And then I think inevitably what you do is you almost have to bring about some kind of easier divorce to handle that situation. I mean, you don't, but if you don't allow some kind of low fault divorce, let's call it, as a result of that expansion, you'll have, I think politically that's untenable. I think you have just people complaining. I don't think you can politically maintain that.
I mean, I would say that it's probably politically distasteful, right? Like it's a difficult thing and they probably won't do it. My argument would be, no, you never lower the case. You want to do a polygamous marriage? Know what decisions you're making and you're free to
Oh,
make
sure.
whatever decision you like, but you're not free from the consequences of those decisions. And you know, that's the reality. And, unfortunately, we live in a society where everybody wants to be, you know, separated from actually having to deal with the consequences of the decisions that they've made. And so that's a problem. But I think you can address that and say, no, you need to make sure that you're choosing better people. You need to make sure that you are picking who you are going to spend the rest of your life with well, because that's the goal. Now, there's
Well, and
also another argument that you could say that you could go to civil unions, right? There's also the option that, you know, I think a lot of people have gotten to the point where they don't want the state involved in marriage at all.
yeah, I mean, and for a while it really wasn't. I was looking at it. This is a while back, and basically, it's my understanding that it wasn't so much the state was the force of was saying that you were married. They were just recognizing something that had already existed, and the
Correct.
practicalities of it. Um, and and in that regard, like for in kind of so I think I don't think you can fully separate the church and state in this regard, so to speak, because I think you kind of have to recognize the combining nature of marriage in a legal aspect of it. I think to not do that would require us first to radically deregulate society. We'd have to just repeal a ton and ton of regulation and laws
Why?
because of how many things are, because of how much marriage is entwined in the statutes, basically,
Okay.
and how much it only works because marriage is entwined in the statutes, and if it didn't, then you would have you'd have some significant issues dealing with the concept of marriage within the law. When a married couple goes and enters into something.
Sure. But I mean, like you could argue that it just basically makes most of those laws invalid
That any
because if
well,
there's no marriage anymore, if the state's not involved in marriage anymore and they're not recognizing it, then that
yeah,
means
but
if
that doesn't solve the problem.
what problem? Like let's pick out a specific example if you can.
Okay, so I mean, wasn't expecting here, so I don't have a ton of example. Okay, let's take the hospitals things. So are you now if if the laws are no longer say protect the rights of married people to visit spouses in the hospital, can anybody visit the house spot? Can anybody visit you in the hospital, or can
Sorry.
bite me? Um,
No thanks. Not my type. And to answer your question, yes, you know, just about anybody can go visit somebody in the hospital at any time. Like that's a normal thing. I don't know why I know that there probably are circumstances where there are issues with that, but
there's plenty of restriction on visitation rights in hospitals.
I- accepting COVID without that,
Um, yeah, there is the duration, there's the number of visitors, there's the if the hospital is crowded, I believe they can limit you to direct family.
okay,
Um, there's been various aspects of that.
sure,
There is the outside of visiting hours, I think it's family only or something. So
okay. Well, I mean, like that's, I would call that for the most part kind of inconvenient, but I don't know how,
I'm just not sure what you get by eliminating it, eliminating
like
marriage from state.
taking the state out of it, you get
Yeah, entirely.
as a, well, that depends if you're a male or a female. If you're a male, then generally speaking, you get a lot. Like
Right.
it evens the playing field a significant amount. But but as a female, like probably nothing because you don't, I
Yeah,
mean,
I
like
mean, I think it's.
we know current laws are incentivized for women to leave, right?
I mean,
So,
yeah, I mean, it would be better from. It'd be better than what we currently have, but most things would be better than what we currently have. Like, there's a
well,
lot of options that'd be better than what we currently have.
right. And I'm not saying that you're just like, oh, we're going to make it better than we currently have. I mean, to me, you're just undoing something that was done in like the 1970s,
I mean,
60s, whatever,
I
right?
think
Like
that
it's just
sure,
a
well,
reversion.
kind of along that line. I guess what I would think would be better would be the like if you get a Catholic marriage, all right, the rules of divorce are decided by or set up by the Catholic Church, basically.
Uh-huh.
And if you got a and so you could choose which marriage contract you want to enter into.
Sure. And the
And
problem that
and
you run into is that only applies to certain religions. And it
okay,
does apply to certain religions in today's world.
right. Well, but I'm saying if the state recognizes this and they go, well, it's you entered into a Catholic marriage, you can't get divorced unless you get approval from the church.
Right.
And and
But
so
that's so people have like I agree with you, but I don't see that happening in today's society because again, we're living in a two-tiered juris, jurisprudence system. Like that's just the reality. There was actually a case in Texas where a couple was married according to Islamic law,
right.
and she wanted to get divorced.
Islamic law
I
didn't
don't,
allow it or
and
whatever.
she has no, like, according to Islamic law, as far as I understood this case, is it said, well, she doesn't have a say in that. The only way that there's a divorce is that he agrees to it, and the imam, I think, has to agree to it.
Right.
And so Texas court said, well, sorry, you signed the agreement and you're part of that church. I'm sorry. Now, I don't know if that got overturned on appeal or what, but I mean, like, that should be a clear example that I think we should follow to a certain extent. And again, you you should
I'm sorry,
you
I'm confused. What are
you're
you
gonna
advocating to override Islamic law or
no, I'm saying I want the law to be addressed, like, um to be uh enforced equally. That's all I'm saying. Like, if I get it married in a Catholic church,
Mhm.
then the priest has to approve a divorce, which means you have to prove to the priest that there's a reason that you're going to get divorced. That,
Right,
generally speaking, right?
right,
And that's not the case in today's, like,
sure,
you go to court right now, they're going to be
right,
like, no, she can say what she can say she wants to get divorced, and you're going to.
right,
My point is that if in today's world, like, it's different if you're like
right. But we're
the
advocating for a change of today's world, so I'm guessing I'm a little confused.
okay, I guess I'm saying that I don't think you're gonna get that change because they don't care.
Okay, I mean,
You don't matter to them, and nor do I.
okay. I guess I don't see how this seems like an easier way thing to get than removing the state from marriage entirely.
I mean, I agree.
And that's
Sure.
kind of my point. Like this seems like that would get everything like that would just fit society would determine itself what's the best marriage contract basically because
Right,
people
but I
would
don't.
learn over time that marriage contract sucks, do not get a Lutheran marriage.
Yeah, I just I mean, like, I'd love that to happen, but
Yeah,
I don't think it will.
no, I mean like not anytime soon.
I mean,
um
when you have actual legal documents that are unenforceable in court, then what's the point? Like,
well, I
that's
mean
where
that's just
I think we have to fight that shit first.
oh yes, I mean like we have a massive legal problem where our legal system is held together by duct tape and bribes. It's we were hoping that there was it was held together by a mutual appreciation for the law, which died probably about 10 years ago. I mean,
Sure.
it certainly died in the last 3 years.
Oh,
Probably died
absolutely.
in probably died in 2016. But
I
the
think it actually probably died long before that.
yeah, I'm inclined to believe that. I think that yeah, it that in of itself is the problem. But I'm wondering like just how far back we need to purge the system of things from a social perspective. Like legally, we need to fix a ton.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, from a social perspective, I mean, I think that uh, it's difficult. It's difficult to say because everybody's in different positions in life,
Mm-hmm.
and most people are afraid to go out on a limb and say, you know what, this isn't right. This is not what I believe in, and stand up for it because they have a job and a family that they've got to try to feed and support, and they don't have the option to do that. I think people like you and I are a little bit different where we have the ability to do that, and I think as that, you know, I think we have a duty to do that, let's say.
Sure,
And I think that's part of why you and I are having these conversations is because we feel duty bound to try to make things better because we see what's wrong and we have the ability and the knowledge to do so.
Right. Well, and that's kind of why, like, I was looking at the like, what is the conservative position on homosexuality? Because it is like I look at it, I'm like, well, from a Christian perspective, which let's assume that for the sake of argument, let's assume that is the core of conservatism, which is kind of true these days. Um, it's clearly a sin, right? It's not something you should be doing, is to err. But of course, we're all sinners, right?
Right.
And I think that's probably a better way is to work forward from that instead of working backwards. It's like, we cross the line and keep pushing that backwards, we'll probably overstep it. And so I think if we find a point where we rebuild that and basically just say, you know, what is our tolerance of homosexuality? What should they be a part of and what shouldn't? Like what like obviously if you're known to be very greedy, maybe we don't put you in charge of handling the church's money, for instance, and give you a blank ability to manage the funds of the community, basically. If you gamble it or you're not good with money. So what is the equivalent with somebody who is, who's gay? Do we say they can't teach? That feels wrong. But probably they shouldn't be educating children about certain topics.
Well, I mean, and yeah, you're talking about some sketchy stuff there because you're seeing that right now, right? Like where you have math teachers that are indoctrinating children using this
This
kind of
is
stuff, and
right.
like it's essentially like the reason I'm bringing that up is because of what you said as far as like, hey, we allow them to teach this, and okay, but they're teaching other things. I think a lot of it requires parents to get involved and
Sure.
they have to be involved in their kids' lives. If you if they were, had they been over the last, I don't know, 30 years, 40 years, you wouldn't have what you have right now. Like that wouldn't be a thing because there are too many parents, I think, that would look at it and say, what do you, why, why is this a thing? You shouldn't be talking about that. That's not
Right.
okay.
Well, and
And they
that's
would
and
have
that's
shut it down immediately.
and it's kind of implicit in my argument is that like a math teacher talking about these sort of the dildos and butt plugs is easily stopped if you pay attention. Like that is like no, just stop that immediately. Not hard to tell that they are deviating from math to get there. Um, but if like you don't have to pay close attention to stop that. Like, that shouldn't be something that is it is a difficult thing to stop a math teacher from talking about. Now, if you say have somebody teaching reproductive anatomy to kids, and that's the topic of the course, you're going to have to pay a little bit closer attention to stop them from talking about those topics.
Sure.
Because to some extent, there is an aspect of it where that may come up and they may need to address it and have an answer.
Right. But I mean, like, they don't teach that to, like, that's a high
Right.
school level class, right? Like, that's
Absolutely.
actually usually, I think, a junior or senior level class even.
Sure.
And I think that there's, while that's a reasonable thing, like I think it actually goes to a broader systemic thing where people have to realize they have to decide that it's not okay. They have to be willing to sacrifice something in order
And it,
to in
sure.
order to
And
save their children.
that is one of the reasons why I'm broaching this topic is because I think if if we're clear on specific purpose details where the lines are, it can empower people to stand up as we approach the line, basically, because they know where the line is. If they don't know where the line is, then it's harder to I'd say it's harder to stand up. It's harder to have that conviction.
Well, so I would say the problem is that I don't know if there is a line. I don't know that there
Well,
is a given line. I don't know that the Republican side, conservatives, whatever, has a line in place. We could come up with one, but it would be based on our personal moral,
well,
guidance.
yeah, that's basically what I'm saying is as conservatives, where do we think the line should be?
That, look, don't label me with that shit. I'm not a conservative.
I mean, you're probably not Republican, but socially, you're very conservative.
Oh, I very conservative. I wouldn't even call myself a conservative. I'd call myself a traditionalist. So where I would draw the line, nobody'd go to.
That's where would you draw the line? I'm curious.
Where would I draw the line? It's not allowed in polite society.
Homosexuality isn't allowed in polite society.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means out in public, you shouldn't be able to tell that they're homosexual at all.
Something of that nature. Yeah.
Okay. Um,
And to be fair, I also am not a huge, like, I'm not a fan of PDA for straight couples either,
no,
right?
yeah, I imagine this is a just a level of sexuality shown in public that you're
Right.
against. That shouldn't be immediately clear that someone is straight either.
Right.
Um, yeah, sure, that makes sense. I'm inclined to agree. Um,
Like if everybody keeps their own like sexual proclivities to themselves, this becomes a non-issue. Like here's the deal, you're like I'm not gonna share my, you know, that I'm straight in public with everybody where I'm, you know, fawning all over people or making out with somebody in the hallway or whatever that is, right? Whatever that PDA looks like.
yeah,
And like but that goes for everyone, not just not
yeah.
not just
No,
it's
I'm,
not
I'm,
one way.
I'm mulling over the implications of it because the next thought
The
is
argument is going to be holding hands in public.
the argue that is what people are debating over.
That's what it's going to be. They'll be like,
Which
oh,
is
so we can't even hold hands in public. That's like I've heard that argument before 20 years ago.
like, we can negotiate that as your response. We might
Well,
be
I
able
mean,
to tolerate that,
I would
maybe.
say if you want to hold hands in public, that's fine. There are a lot of places in the US is kind of weird about that kind of stuff, but there are a lot of places in the world that it's not strange for two men or two women to hold hands while walking down the street. Like we could make holding hands with other people, other individuals, a socially accepted practice, like as just
Yeah.
human beings, and I'm okay with that.
Where is it socially acceptable for men to do that?
Uh, let's stay on topic.
Okay.
There's,
I'm curious, but
well, I mean, from what I understand, like it's fairly normal in and accepted in Europe or even in the Middle East, even in like
hmm, okay.
Islamic countries, like because it's not seen as a sexual thing. That's the
Yeah,
big
no,
deal. Like it's not seen that way.
it's just it feels like an odd gesture for two men, but
Right, but
that's a whole different
but that's from an American perspective, right?
perhaps. I mean, it's a whole thing of like gender roles and anyway. That's a whole different discussion.
So you're saying that
But
you don't hold hands with your buddy and skip through the park with him? What
hey,
kind of
look, that was
monster are
one
you?
time and they said they deleted that video. Okay.
It was in college and it doesn't count, right?
Something like that. It was a bit. They were
Well,
using a dare. No.
I was
No,
drunk.
it's
He
just
made me do it.
um No, I just it
and off the rails. That's always good.
yeah. No, I'm still kind of trying to figure out if like going back that far, I feel like you're the amount of social guide rails you now have. I'm trying to think if marriage would even be, man, that'd be so radically different. It'd be so hard to get there though. Um,
Yes, your
yeah,
terms are
okay.
acceptable.
I don't mind it. Like that sounds like a good world to live in. Back to, where it's, you know, the like I don't really see a strong reason. Like, what is the value of all this sexualization in culture right now?
Gain anything?
Like,
Nothing.
I don't see any value to it. It
And
has only a negative impact in my life on that.
I have an interesting thought. So we were talking earlier about having the having marriages recognized, right? And so I think you may be right on that. I think that might be a good road to go down. And here's the deal, because a lot of people who are, let's say, agnostic,
Right.
right? Non-religious, they'd be like, well, how do I get married, right? Well, in reality, I would say that my argument would be if you just want to get married in the eyes of the state, fine. And
The
but
state can have a contract. Yeah.
you follow the state's laws based on
Right.
your contract. Because I mean, if you go to the JP and get married, I don't think you take vows and just and do any of that. My understanding is like, hey, we're getting married, and you fill out a paperwork and you hand
You
it over.
basically you vow to be married.
I don't even think you
Yeah.
vow. You don't even do that. Like you just say, yes, we're married now, but that means that you follow their contract. I think
Yeah. When I say
whatever,
vows, I mean you basically restate that you're entering into the contract. But yeah.
right. But I think like, yeah, I think you should be bound by whatever, I'm trying to think of how to put it, whatever religion you decide to, whatever religion's rules you decide to get married into, right? So if you get and you can list that on your marriage certificate and say, we were married Baptist, Catholic, whatever, something you're going to have to agree to ahead of time,
Yes.
right? And so
Yes.
now you know what the rules are, and the state is not involved in those marriage. If you're married,
Should it question for you?
hang on, let me
Should it even
finish.
okay.
Hang on. The state is not involved in those marriages. The state merely recognizes that they exist. So
Yeah.
that you have the benefits of saying, hey, we're married. And so if you get tax benefits from it or whatever, all of those things, but things with regard to marriage, the way that the interactions go, the way that, all of that is all decided within the church, period. Done.
Yes. Yes. I'm kind of want to take it a step further and say only the state cannot marry you. You can only enter into a civil union,
Yeah, I mean, you could change that language. Sure.
basically, because I think marriage needs to have a much deeper aspect of social, if not spiritual, promise.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Like
So,
a marriage occurs inside the church,
right.
right? And
It's
if you
automatically
just want to,
recognized as a civil union as
and
well.
yeah, and the state just recognizes that civil union, but they also understand that they're subjugated to the rules of that church.
Yes.
They can only enforce within the what those rules of that church are. Um,
It
Now
also
there might have to be
institutionalizes the
some
concept of a church. Kind of like it.
true, but the other thing that you have to look at is you're going to have to set some overreaching, like some overarching kind of umbrella boundaries that the church is not allowed to uh, infringe on, let's say.
Like, what are you thinking
Because
of?
otherwise you'll end up where you have um, any of your other um, any of the other odd things that you're talking about, like polygamy, for instance.
Hmm.
Well, that's acceptable in some churches.
Is there a
So
social reason the state shouldn't recognize that then?
I
Or
don't know.
is there a reason the state shouldn't recognize that?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a question that you'd have to figure out because you'd have, I mean, you'll have stuff like that, and then you have stuff like in in some, I'm not going to say all of Islam, but some sects of Islam that women have zero rights, right? And I mean, I don't know how I argue and say, well, you know, if you in now part of it, I think you have to enter into the marriage of your own volition,
yes,
right? And if you
yes.
do that, how do I argue that you need to have some sort of
I was
different
gonna,
rules if you chose to do that? I'm like,
I mean, and I think that was gonna be my question is like, is there a limit to what rights you can voluntarily give up?
I don't know.
I mean, because there's some fair questions of like, at a certain point, the likelihood that you're actually doing it on your own volition is low, and perhaps there's undetected um uh
I mean, there's a lot of social pressure, right?
right.
Especially in certain communities, not necessarily just Islam, but in several other communities where there's a lot of social pressure that you need to get married or like arranged marriages. I know that's a big thing, or historically was a big thing in India,
Sure, but
right? And so
social
in
pressure is not always a bad thing either.
n no, but it can lead to issues with people not making informed decisions on their own basis, and that's my concern, right? I think
No,
social
I
pressure is fine, but if they're not being able to make independent judgments and decisions that they feel like are best for them, then I don't know that that's okay.
no, I agree. It's more of a how do you detect that sort of a thing.
It
And
would be difficult if
and
possible at all.
yeah, and that's why I look at all this stuff. I'm like, there is the coercive aspect of it. There's maybe some practical aspects where you get to a point where it's clearly too it's this is too much stuff that you're giving up, and it's very likely you're being coerced to do this. So maybe we should stop it. I don't know, but I don't really have an answer on that.
Yeah, I mean,
But I think that
you
kind
can
of
argue that, but you could also argue like, hey, if you've got a guy that's worth say half a million or half a billion dollars, right? He's got $500 million sitting in the bank on
yeah.
top of anything else. Like, and somebody decides, you know what? I want to like some girl decides she wants to be with him, knowing that he's married and that
Hmm.
she gets nothing. Like, and she agrees to that. And he says, look, you can like we can enter into another marriage, but like this is my first wife. She gets everything. You get nothing, nothing. And that woman says, you know, I get that, and that sucks, but I'll have a better life
No,
for me and any children that I bear
and
by entering into that. Like it's hard to I mean, like that's another one that you like. How do you argue it? Like
no, I agree. There's
they
all sorts
basically
of
give up rights to everything in
there's
order to
things like I would never want to give up my rights for that, but I could see that other people would.
right.
But no, I think we've about covered that. It's an interesting. I kind of like that whole idea of let's democratize the rules in which you can bind yourself in marriage, or at least decentralize it or whatever. I think it'd be an interesting.
Right. Yeah, I
So
mean, it would, you know, it would push the church back into the forefront. It would give them, you know, the only concern that I have is it would give some of them more power that they don't need or deserve.
but
But
it'd be
at the
market
same,
regulated.
right, it's a free market. It's a free
Right.
market economy is what it is. You can do
You
whatever
could,
you want to. You make the choice that you want to make. If you don't like that church, you can go get married in a different church. And like you have a very strict set of bounds of what you can do,
right.
right?
Yeah. No, I like it. I like it. So let's move on to how
Hang
much
on
we
just
So this is something I was sort of thinking about with, sometimes I have a hard time just letting go. And how much of this is appropriate versus how much of this is something that I need to work on, right? Like how much of this is
Hmm.
natural drive to get shit done and build stuff versus, how much of this just is just me being uptight. Um, because like, yeah, the idea of sailing around the world on a sailboat sounds pretty dope. But like, would I get bored?
Maybe.
I don't know. Like, there's also, am I like abandoning society? Do I have a duty to my community to stay and fight and build?
I mean, there's an argument to be made that the reason that you think that way, or the reason that you think that you have to be working all the time, is because that was what is ingrained in you as social. Like the only way, the only way you're useful is to be doing or making something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much
I think some of the stuff that you're talking about, the stuff that we're like, you doing, can be fun, right?
well,
Like you can be grinding and it can be fun,
sure. And that's the thing is I like building things.
right?
I like that. And and so that's part of it is like and that's part of what I mean by like would I be bored on a sailboat? Just sailing.
Yeah. You have to get used to just relaxing, right?
So what do I do?
Think about all the things that you could learn, the books that you could read, the stuff that you could do.
The buildings I couldn't build, the machines I couldn't machine,
Yeah.
I don't know. But no, I think there's plenty of it would be a shift in lifestyle for sure. Um, but I mean, it's also one that like this is a very new option for people in civilization. The idea of just being able to
For
like,
normal people.
yes, well, for somebody of our status, let's say, like I have enough assets that I could sell everything and go buy a boat.
Right.
Um, that wouldn't be that hard. Um,
It's not. You can buy actually, well, I haven't looked recently, but at one time, whenever I was boat shopping, you could find a decent quality ocean cruiser for 50, somewhere between 50 and 150,000.
oh, it's not bad at all.
Right.
Um, so there's, it's like, is this, and it's not just sailing, obviously. There's all sorts of other things where, like, I think van life could be considered a cheaper version of this.
I mean, off-grid living.
Yeah, I mean, off-grid living in general was always, I mean, that was the norm for centuries
Sure.
before the grid. Um,
So was van life.
yeah, but the modern iteration of
Ask
van
the
life.
ask the Native Americans, the original van lifers. Well, not even
Yeah,
the original van lifers. I mean, you could go all the way back to the Mongols, right? Like they were nomadic peoples. The
Sure.
same thing.
Well, but the modern iteration of van life is a lot less productive.
Yeah, I mean, you could, I mean, that would depend on your definition of productive, right? Because you could say that like nomadic lifestyles never really productive. They were sustaining. That was it.
Sure. But I mean, I don't know that the current iteration of van life is self-sustaining.
I would argue that most people who do van life currently are not self-sustaining, but I think that you very easily could be,
Sure.
right? Like you could pick up, it's very easy to sustain because you can pick up odd jobs here, there, and yonder, which is how some of them do it. It's how some of those people actually do their van life is they go around and they find odd jobs and they just do stuff for cash and they
Right.
survive that way.
Right.
Now, a lot of them in today's world are, they make videos for YouTube and that's
They're
how they make,
influencers and they have no skills and
stop using that word.
I
Nasty.
that's what I was going for. Vulgarity of it.
I'll stop myself. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, like, uh, yeah, you're right. But the same thing could be said for people who are sailing, right?
Well,
It's the
and that's
same
kind of
same type deal.
and
And
it
I don't know that there's a right answer. I think it's
hence why this is a discussion.
personally, yeah. I think it's gonna be very personally dependent. Um, and yeah, I think I think too many people are on too far of ends of the spectrum where people are either like drivers and want to work all the time or they don't want to work at all and do nothing.
Yeah. And and some of this is I think this is in the context of this it's called the cultural civil war, right? Where we're things in this country are at an all-time tension high.
Hmm.
And like there's an aspect of like abandoning it feels like cowardice and not doing something to at least fortify myself and for lack of a better word, my family is uh lazy and neglectful.
Okay,
Like there just feels like there should be a sense of urgency.
maybe.
I mean, again, I'm posing this kind of as a question a little bit because
Yeah,
I don't know
like
what.
so I as you know, I disagree because I also kind of believe in the go where you're treated best type scenario. Um, Now, don't get me wrong, like there's a time to fight. I think there's a time to fight and a time to run, and there's certain things, but uh, you know, like personally, I'm okay fighting if if there is if we're playing by the same rules, or at least similar, or at least close. And currently in the United States, we ain't playing by the same rules.
Sure, and I think I understand what you mean. I mean, for me, I don't think that that's quite. I was looking at it as sort of the what's your best strategy for this? Like if you're, can you like if and that's kind of the reason why I say cowardice, because I don't think cowardice is I look at cowardice as running away from a fight that you should fight, right? Or it's running away from something that you should endure or deal with that sucks, but you should. Um,
Sure.
because
And I would
there's
question why you think that this is something that you should fight or endure.
um because I don't necessarily fundamentally I don't think there's a better option.
Okay,
Like
that's fair.
I think that I think anywhere I go, I'm gonna have to deal with bad fallout from what happens here.
I mean, yeah, but that's part of that is just because of the world economy. Like you're going to
Okay,
have economic issues, right? Like
sure.
that's a reality. But I mean, like you could easily go to Eastern Europe, which are countries that are highly Christian, mostly Catholic.
Hmm.
I mean, like Romania, Hungary are both, I think, like 98.5% Christian
Hmm.
countries.
Right.
Very, very much of like a conservative or traditionalist type style. And so, like, the difference would be economics, potentially.
Well, maybe. I mean,
And
and so
maybe not, right?
well, some of the degree to which it gets bad in other countries is going to be proportionate to the degree in which it gets bad here. But if it doesn't get that bad here, and if it doesn't get that bad there, it doesn't get that bad here. And so it's sort of the less bad it gets here, there's sort of the more reason to try and stay and fight.
So,
Um,
bad in what regards?
um,
Because at first we were talking about culture war stuff. So if you're talking about culture war, like the US could implode based culturally, and it would have some impact on, say, let's use Hungary and Romania, for example, but overall, I would think that it would have very little actual impact in them because they're very devout in what their beliefs are. They know where they stand. And so I don't think you'd see a lot of issues there.
well, but a cultural implosion will result in a implosion of other institutions as well, governmental
Sure.
power, etc.
Mhm.
And that would get shunted off to the rest of the world in many ways. Like that, I mean, I don't know. Like it's one of those things. Like yes, if and ask me again in
Hmm.
a year and a half, right?
Right.
Um, a year and a half, I might say no, absolutely, we need to stay and fight. U.S. is the last bastion of this of freedom, let's say, for lack of a better term. I think it's a little more complicated than that, but um,
I mean, I think we fight while we're here, but I think that you don't have a backup, like don't not have a backup plan,
oh yes,
right? Like have a secondary, like you need to be able to fall back. It's either that or die,
well,
right?
and then
And so, like
and
honestly, I would actually right now I would probably prefer Russia to the US right this moment.
yes, but I think Zoom is about to cut out then.
Yeah. I mean, we may get shut down and that may happen, but I mean like
No, I
but let's be
agree.
real, if you look at it, like they align better with my morals and values
And they
and
seem like they're up and coming.
they are up and coming. They have lots like are one of the reasons, my theory on one of the reasons we tried to hold Russia down and battle it out between the US and Russia for so long is because we're so alike, right? They
Like
have
it's
the abundance of natural resources. They have an abundance of arable land. Like they can be basically self-sufficient and not
Well,
have to not rely on trade with anybody else in the world, and so can the US.
so in culturally, everything points to the fact that the US and Russia should be good allies. The fact that we're allied with Europe instead is really just a historical hangover.
Right.
Like that's it. Because culturally, US and Russia are probably a lot more similar.
Mhm.
We have that there's a lot more of the pioneer, rugged individualism. There's a lot of apparently there's a lot of communities, especially in kind of the rural areas of Russia, that kind of idolize cowboy culture.
From what I hear, it's actually kind of all over Russia.
Oh, is it?
Like
Yeah. I
they're
mean, it sounds
huge fans of like they love like the Western movies, big fans of John
yep,
Wayne, that kind of
yep,
stuff. But it's
yep.
that rugged individualism, I think, that appeals to them. But I mean, you figure in Russia right now, in more rural areas, there are plenty of people still living off-grid lives. They
Oh,
don't
really? Yeah.
have, I mean, I've watched documentaries on it. Like they literally like there's one dude who has that has put together a raft out of logs from his property, and he rafts down the river and picks up a load of hay from Farmer John, and then yeah, I mean like they just mound it up on this deal, and then they
How
float it
to
down the river to
learn
the next one,
Russian.
and then they just pull off and kick it off to Farmer Jim, and Jim feeds his cattle with it, and then they I think they pull back upstream, but it's a slow moving stream. It doesn't move real fast, so you can go up and down it very easily, real navigable. Yeah.
Right, right. And if we run away when Russia starts arming us, you won't get more AK-47s for free. Just saying. The the
You
the
you
fast
think that
shooting
I
ones.
would have less AK-47 access in Russia than I would in the States
Probably.
from the country that designed them?
Yes, because they're probably not going to be just handing you the spicy pew pew versions of them,
They might.
but maybe fly you back first class. Maybe you're the one that walks off that first ramp with the crates.
Hey guys,
Translator.
I'm back. What? What do you got there? Nothing. Don't worry about that. What's in the box?
I come bearing gifts,
Nothing.
but I
No, I
mean,
mean, yeah, for real. Like we really do. I mean, it's sad that people have created this huge animosity between the U.S. and Russia, the Ukraine and Russia. And those people are family. Doesn't make any sense for those two to be fighting. None whatsoever.
it's
If you
what
sit
NATO
down and
does.
think about it, oh yeah, NATO's been a useless organization for 40 years.
Well, I mean, like I say NATO, it's the fucking gay,
WEF,
yeah,
global
well, it's the
cabal, whatever you
global
want to go with.
American empire. Because it's like the
The
reality is
the lizard
the
people.
yes, basically. Anyway, the it's like
Sorry, I was just going to see how long I could sit there frozen to see if
there's enough movement that I can tell, but um because it's the same effect you see stateside, where you have the populist on the left and the populist on the right basically saying the same shit, and they're supposed to hate each other.
Trump Kennedy 2024.
That would be scary.
Scary good.
Yes, yes. Well, I would be scared if I were either of them. Do not travel in the same car together.
Stay out of Dallas.
Dallas might be okay, actually.
Fort
Now,
Worth would
like,
no, Fort Worth would be much better. Dallas,
okay, but just don't give them a clustered target.
yes,
Do not be in the same car together. Don't do it.
right.
It just Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's like if you're looking at like if things go to hell here, and it'd be probably easier for me to enjoy being on a boat. But I'm just
Sure.
thinking more of like the not boat as an escape plan, but like, and some of this is the small things of like, oh, how much should I focus on building things like a pool, which would be fun and nice to have, a lot of work, but
Are you talking about like an in-ground pool? Is that what I'm presuming you're thinking?
I mean, I might do above ground to start, but
I mean, like, let's be real. Costco had a decent quality above ground pool that was on sale over the, was it Memorial Day holiday? That was 650 bucks.
oh,
They're
okay.
cheap. Like above ground pools in the grand scheme of things are dirt cheap. That's why I'm saying like I get it. Like, but I mean, you figure I don't even know what I spent building that shed out at the cabin, right?
Yeah.
But it was several grand.
Okay.
Like like I'm not stopping what I'm doing. Like I'm going to continue to build and do things, and because one, I'll get the benefit of them while I'm doing them, and two, they will add value in the long run. Now, will I get like if I spent $4,000 on that shed, am I going to get $4,000 worth of value added to my property? No, but maybe two.
But how much was the usage value of it?
Right.
No, and because that's what I'm thinking is like there's all of the things. There's plenty. Like I like improving my property. I like working on it. I like enjoying the fruits of working on it. Um, but it's how much can and should I be devoting it for things that are purely entertainment value, like a pool.
Uh, So, I mean,
That was kind of what I'm
I
saying.
think there needs to be a balance there, right? But
Hmm.
but at the same time, like there does need to be balance,
How do you
right?
know when you found that
What is
balance?
it that they say? All work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. Maybe that was Fight Club. Anyways, um, I don't know. I think that point's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah,
Um, I have learned to recognize in myself when I need to just like chill out, take a day off, um, which is difficult for me, even sometimes whenever I do realize that. And more of it as I get older is just like, hey, like dude, you can't keep going like you're 20 years old and, you know, cutting through the brush like I've been doing out there, right? Like
sure, sure.
fighting the land and all that. Like it's hard. Um, but like, yeah, I mean, I do it and I enjoy doing it. Now I've been thinking about for a couple of years now putting a pool in the backyard just to have a place to cool off, get in the water that I know is safe and clean, let's say, because there's just not a lot of options around here.
Sure.
Um, and part of it's for me because I enjoy the water. Part of it's for the dog so that he can, you know, get in
And
there and
it's
swim around.
right. And it's easier for me to take a day off and go and do the things I enjoy. Right.
Hmm.
Like but it's hard for me to prioritize the fun sections of the property when I'm still working on the functional ones.
Hmm.
And like in my mind, it's like, oh, I need to get through these things, these projects first before I get to that. And then those projects just, well, that was a small project. It's not a small project anymore. That was a small project. That's not a small project anymore. And that one you thought was going to be done in a week. It's been 6 months.
Did your parents make you eat all of your dinner before you could have dessert?
Sometimes when I
Did you
was
grow up?
younger, not so much as I got older.
Yeah. Did you get a, well, that's even, I mean, it still tracks. So did you have like a system that you had to earn rewards in your household? Like you had
I
to earn the
mean,
right to do whatever, like by getting good grades or
not so much.
doing your
Like there,
chores or things like that.
there might have been other perks additionally that I could gain by doing that stuff, but Most it was more of a, and that wasn't a very successful attempt to motivate me.
There.
But for the most part, no, it was I
Okay.
had
I'm
access, I
just
did
asking,
access to things. Yeah.
like it's interesting because there's a lot of people who theorize that a lot of the reason that people don't do the fun things or allow themselves to go have fun and enjoy is because they feel like since they've from the time they've grown up, like they always had to earn that. And so they have a hard time feeling like internally feeling like that they've earned it. And if they haven't earned it, then they can't go do it. And
Well,
I like when I heard that, I felt that one because I'm like, I do that. Like,
I think that is natural and appropriate because the fun is excess, right? So
hmm,
you can't
oh, I
have
don't,
fun unless you have the excess.
yeah, I mean, I think I think you're right. I think it's a healthy habit to have to a certain extent. You just have to, I think, make sure that it doesn't get out of hand, let's say.
Right. And that was the thing. It was like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do the things I need to first, then I can do the thing I enjoy, because that's just how that works everywhere in all aspects of life.
Right.
It just so happened the things that I picked to get done first
Can you tell the
were
millennials and the Gen Zers that whenever they want to buy a $350,000 house that's identical to what their parents have,
as someone whose first house was significantly more than that. Um,
and then complain that they can't afford it?
I,
Nobody can afford a house these days. Yeah, you can. You just don't, you can't afford the house you want. That's the problem.
I, I'll never be able to afford the house I want. The house I want is like 8 stories, 4 of which are underground.
Just weird, man.
I didn't say
I,
I wasn't.
I don't want to have to clean that much.
No, I didn't say I was gonna clean it,
Okay.
which means you now have to afford a cleaning crew. Yeah, I'm never gonna be able to afford it. I know,
I don't want to have to afford a cleaning crew. Let's go with that.
but okay. And some of it is I'm tolerant of
Like
mess, but
I could I could get I could win the lottery and I'm still not gonna buy like a 4 or 8,000 square foot house. Like that's never gonna happen. Like
well, I mean, a lot
how
of
big's
it's
your
like,
house, Sean? Like I don't know, make 1,000, 1,100 square foot maybe. Like it's got a couple of bedrooms, a couple of bathrooms. That's it. Like I don't need much.
yeah.
Now, if I get married and have kids, that might change slightly, but it ain't gonna be.
So a lot of it for me is now we're getting to housing discussion, but a lot of it's not like actual normal housing rooms. It's all of the things I'd like to have for personal use and don't want to share.
Gotcha. So you
But
want to have an underground garage that you can park your tank in.
yeah, let's pretend it's underground in the garage and not somewhere else in the property.
M1 Abrams.
I mean, by that point, it'll probably be easy to get one.
Going by Ukraine.
Need some work.
Oh,
Those might need some work.
oh, really?
Well, you could talk to
Ask the
Russia about getting the leopards instead.
well, you could buy a completely functional Leopard from Russia right now if they'd be willing to sell it to you. But ask the cartels where they got all of their AT-4s and Javelins from.
I think it was the CIA.
Uh-huh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely wasn't Ukrainians selling stuff on the black market.
Oh, recently, yes. I thought you were talking before how they got them, and that
No,
was
no, that was the ATF.
oh, it was the ATF.
That was the
I thought the
ATF.
ATF. I thought it
Yeah.
was CIA backing the ATF
Tomato, tomato. Like
because the
it's
CIA has jurisdiction to operate outside the borders, and that's why they needed to anyway. The
you
point is,
telling
kids
me you
don't
don't
trust the
think that
government.
the CIA is you don't think the CIA is operating inside the borders?
No, no, I don't think the ATF is operating outside of our borders.
Mm,
Well, much.
yeah, huh, yeah, yeah.
I don't think they're allowed
I don't
to.
think anybody, well, by law, they're not allowed to.
Right. So
And by
when they
law,
were
the
outside the
FBI is not
country,
allowed to, and they still do. And
right,
by law, the CIA is not allowed to operate inside the country, but they still do. Like nobody's following
right,
the
right.
effing laws
So,
anymore.
well, what they did was when they crossed the border, they took off the ATF patch and put on the CIA patch,
Right.
and then they were good.
They were employed by the FBI, but lent out to the CIA.
Yes.
That's yeah. Attached to a CIA detachment in whatever country. Yeah, I know.
Yep.
No, bullshit.
It's yeah. It's a lot of
Sorry.
plenty of bullshit to go around.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think that going back to kind of topic at hand, it is an interesting. You kind of put up the point is like, when my projects explode in complexity, should I jump the line with the things that I set that I want to have for fun as a result of that explosion in complexity?
I mean, like that's a call you've got to make. I would
I didn't say
say
this.
it kind of
It's a rhetorical question.
depends
Yeah.
on, like, to me, it would depend on how much that exploded in complexity, right? Like if I had three things that I said I had to get done before I could put a pool in, and thing number one blew up to where it's bigger than the original three items were combined, I might go, okay, well, I finally got this one done because it blew up in my face, but I've done the equivalent amount of work that I was telling myself I needed to do to earn the pool, and say, okay, I can go build the pool and there are benefits to the pool, right? Health, like legitimate health benefits to having the pool,
Right.
right? So my argument is that like I can still go work in the yard. Like if I get off work at 3, I can go
Mhm.
work in the yard till 7, 8 o'clock, go swim in the pool or just even lay and relax in the pool for a little bit. And it will improve recovery for tomorrow. You'll actually be able to get more done.
Yeah.
It's really good for like low impact stuff. It's really good for joint health. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, no, I did notice that.
there's a lot of actual health benefits that could actually help you potentially get more done in a larger period, in a shorter period of
I
time.
mean, yeah, right now my getting more done is more like
And the
it's I'm even sure like it's not even wear and tear on my body so much as it's just I've never done this before, and so I plan and my plans break down, and so I have to readjust,
Mhm.
which
That's okay.
yeah,
It
no, I mean it's
happens.
just I'm not surprised by it,
Let me tell
but
you
I
how many
mean
times everything went exactly to plan when building the cabin.
once. Like imagine putting a light switch in one time worked perfectly.
Maybe.
See, once.
I think the only thing that actually went according to plan was setting the um, foundation piers.
Okay,
When I
that's
set
a
all
good thing
those
to go
out,
according to plan.
and yeah, and had them all nice and leveled out and everything else, and it went downhill from there.
Yeah, no, for me it's more of a I have a plan. I start executing the plan. My plan gets completely invalidated, and I have
Mhm.
to go back to the drawing board and reassess, which means more research online, more like, okay, is there a part like this that exists? Okay, yeah, there's a tool that for it. Okay, cool. Whole thing I didn't realize. And then
I have tools specifically to fix something that I effed up on the way.
isn't that where people buy tools? to fix shit
Well,
they've effed up.
I mean, I wouldn't need the tool if I hadn't effed it up along the way, if I had done it right the
Oh,
first time. But it was more of like, oh, you did this, like like a router and a router bit to cut out the windows on the cabin.
mm,
Like, had I planned out the windows whenever I built the walls, then I wouldn't need the router and the router bit to cut out the plywood that's covering where the windows are framed out at now,
yep,
right? Like that's just an example. But I mean, like it happens. It's okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I don't stress about screwing up. It's more just
no, it's more of it gets you it puts you behind on being able to enjoy some of the stuff that you'd like to have some enjoyment of.
right. It results in a lot of spinning where I'm like, okay, I can't do the shit I planned for today. What can I do today? And well, let me figure out how I'm gonna let me plan the new let me get the come up with a new plan. Now what can I do? Okay, not much. What can I do? Work on other things. And the result of iterating through that throughout the day is a lot of me walking around the property, but not actually getting stuff done.
Yeah, done that a lot.
But I'm not surprised by it. I'm not worried about it in the sense I'm just not happy about it.
No, it just puts you behind
Right.
schedule.
Right.
But that's what it looks like. And that's
Right.
how about this? When I started the cabin, I was like, I'm gonna get this thing built in like 6 months. I'm gonna be able to move out here. The whole point of it was I was gonna cut my commute from an hour a day each way to 30 minutes. And I'm still working on the cabin, and it's been 7 or 8 years.
Okay. I don't know if it's been that long. Yeah, I mean, things always take longer than you think, and then you had a bunch of time. Now you don't have the time, and now you got to find instead of like there's been a few projects where I'm like, oh, I have 3 weeks. I will bang it out in 3 weeks. 2 weeks in, I'm like, I have made 10% progress. And
And part of it's my fault. Like when I had the time, I didn't take the time to go do it. That's
oh
just
yeah,
the reality. I just didn't do it. But a lot of
I
it comes down to
I've
the fact that
never
like,
done that. I don't know what you're
yeah, I
talking
know.
about.
But I mean, like part of it comes down to right now, like it's an hour out there and an hour back,
Mhm.
right? Now I'm finally getting close to the point where it's habitable,
Right.
right? I mean, it's been dried in for a long time, but like to have electricity and have, a bathroom and a
And air
shower
conditioning and
and
just
air conditioning, um, those kind of things, like I'm getting to that point where that means on Friday, whenever I get done with work, I can load the dog up. We can drive out there and I can get up Saturday morning and just go to work and work all day long working on stuff.
and eventually you get to a point where we're doing this from your cabin.
And you get yeah, I mean, I get a lot more, I'd be able to get a lot more done because I'm up and I'm there. And then I don't have to worry about trying to get back before a certain time and that kind of stuff.
Right. Right.
Just it makes it be to where you have a lot more time available, and because you have a lot more time available, you get a lot more done. Um, and so yeah, I mean, like that's the idea.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
see, hopefully, you know, now that it's insulated and I've got power, you know, it'll make it to where it's bearable.
Yeah.
And
No,
so
I mean,
yeah,
I think that's, I don't, so there's, I don't think there is a clear answer on how to figure out what you should deviate to entertainment versus productivity. But it is definitely one of those that seems like one of those, the more you put in towards productivity, the easier it's going to be to put it in towards entertainment.
yep. And I think a lot of that depends on your age.
in terms of what you'll be able to do.
No, in terms of what you should do.
Oh, like while you're young, beat yourself silly, working and developing skills.
Hmm.
100%. Like the amount of time I've had to take a break from doing the projects because something's tweaking in my back, and I know if I try to keep digging, it's gonna put me in bed for a week.
Yeah. Sucks getting old, right?
I don't recommend. Well, I mean, if there are other options, I wouldn't recommend it. But
Yes, well, there are other options. Most people just don't like that other option.
yeah, that other option's worse.
Mm. I mean, depends on how you look at it, I guess.
The way I look at it, it's much worse.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Pain.
there's just like what is it that Thomas Sowell says? There's not options, just alternatives, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, tell me about it. Like I can't do the stuff that I could do when I was 20. Like,
Oh yeah.
like that's not a thing anymore, you
Like
know.
coming up, with the
I had a
economy the
friend
way
of
it is, if
mine.
I was 20, I would try to be getting some kind of mobile van set up as minimal as possible, and I'd be trying to move to where the work is.
Yeah. I mean, I like I, I was talking to a friend of mine today, and I was texting with her at like lunchtime, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I got like 4 hours of sleep last night, and I'm just dying on the inside." And I was like, "Yeah, I can't party all night like you used to, huh?"
How old?
Early 30s,
Yeah,
like
that's when you
30,
start to.
like 30 to 35 time.
Yeah, I mean it.
Mm.
I noticed it started when I was 25. By the time I was 27, I'm like, this just isn't as much fun anymore. Like I can do it, but it's just not as much fun. So I'm gonna stop.
Yeah.
And then I try to keep up a little bit in my early 30s, and I'm like, everything hurts all the time. Can you please just hit me with a bat and knock me unconscious? And it's funny because it's happened recently with one of my cousins, and she's 29, 30 or something. And one of her friends goes out, and they're like, they haven't done this in a while because they got a job and they go ham. And I'm like, you shouldn't do that. I'm like sipping on like I think I got like cranberry juice, so it looks like I had a drink. I'm just
What are you
sipping
on
on
your
it for
period?
something like that. Uh,
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
we were both thinking the same seed.
Such a good movie.
Yeah. I mean, if you were here, I guess that means I'm just supposed to punch you in the face, right?
Right,
That is the appropriate response to that.
right. And then
Um,
get your hand broken. So
Worth it.
wow. Guess I've just got one of those punchable faces.
You really do.
Mm, rude.
But
But yeah, I mean, like
yeah,
that's
then
the advice that I give my nephews, right? Like go work. Like you're you're 20, 21, 25. Like go work. Go make
work and
money.
work out and fuck
Learn
everything up.
something, figure it out, go do shit.
Like
Because when you hit 30 or you hit 40 and you figure out, oh, I really wasted my 20s and 30s,
if you're
like
dude,
there's no getting it back.
if you're a guy, your 30s are the peak of your life. So when you're 20,
Mm,
like that is,
disavow.
I okay. I think you're in your prime in your 30s because I think your 20s are for building. Build yourself, build your skills, build your wealth.
I would agree with you in general. In general, that is absolutely true.
Like,
That was not the case for me.
oh, no, no, no. I don't there should be this way. It's more what I'm saying. They weren't for me either. Like I'm like, oh fuck, I I squandered my 20s.
Oh, me too.
Like
I
I
mean,
should have been
I
I
like
should
I actually did a lot of work during my 20s. Like I did a lot, but it wasn't towards anything. I didn't, it
No, yeah,
wasn't
you
towards
need
a
to.
goal or anything like that. It was just like I just worked and I did a bunch of it. Now, that's one of the things that helped, you know, it's one of the reasons that I am the way I am today. And that's the reason that like my boss has to be like, you have to schedule time off. You have too much PTO. You need to take it. And I'm like, what? I have 6 freaking weeks. What am I supposed to do with it? Like, that's more than my entire childhood that we took time off and vacation. Like, it just didn't have it.
Just take 6 weeks off and go get another job. I don't know.
Yeah, right? Like,
Go weld.
whatever. But yeah, I
No,
mean,
but
like, that's a thing. And so I, but I didn't build towards anything then. And I wasn't taking care of myself. And so I am actually in better shape now than I was 5, 6 years ago.
sure. And yeah, right. Like but you're as a if you're 18, you should try to kind of pick a goal that's where you want to be when you're 30. If this is a career, family, a wealth goal, some kind of goal. It doesn't really matter what the goal is. You just need something to focus on, something that you want, and it's a ways out. And that is your reason to get up. And then that is your reason to bust your ass, work out, cook for yourself. Like make sure you know how to cook
Work
yourself.
out,
Take
cook, eat well,
Yes, yes. Like
and
that is
yeah, and like I actually tell like one of the things that I talk to my nieces and nephews about is what do you what do you want envision your life to look like when you're 50, 55, 60, 65, like something in that time range. And I'm not talking about specifics, right? Like, oh,
right.
I don't need you to tell me like you think you're going to be a lawyer and do it. No, like what do you want your general life to look like? You want to have family, kids, grandkids? Like what does that look like to you? Okay. Like we can talk through it from there and I can try to help guide you on like, okay, what you need to
And
do. But there's plenty of different paths to get there. You just need to realize that you have to do something and start in order to get there.
and I'd say don't even worry about picking the thing that's actually truly what you want. Just pick something. Because the reality is trying to switch to another one along the way is so much easier if you're further along the path of a different one.
And it's so much easier than everybody makes it out to be whenever you're younger.
Like career switching or
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Like if
like
you're a
switching your
plumber and you want to become an electrician, people are like, oh, you can't do that. You can't just like switch careers and do something different. Bull,
no,
bull.
it's
If
easier.
you've, it's actually easier, right?
Like it's easier to go from I'm a plumber to electrician than it goes from nothing to an electrician. The problem is that it's you're here and you got to go here, but you will catch up faster and you
Mhm.
will be better when you did plumbing and now you're an electrician. The reality is having both those skills will suit you for a while. They will better you for your entire life.
Mhm. One thing is, plumbing and electricity ain't going away anytime soon that I'm aware of. So,
Fingers crossed.
yeah, I don't know. I kind of like to poop outside, so that's just me though.
Yes, but I would like plumbing to take my poop away so it's not just there
Oh
forever.
no, you just dig a hole. It's fine. Or you can hire the neighborhood kid to pick up the to poop out of the yard for like 20 bucks a week.
Just don't tell him
And
it's your
that'll
shit.
work. That'll work fine until he figures out that you don't have a dog, and then you'll be problematic.
Uh, Oddly enough, no, I one of my long-term goals is to see if I can switch the septic system over to a bioreactor.
Oh, I know. Yeah, yeah.
But so carry it off and turn it into fuel. But yeah.
But yeah, there's lots of stuff. I mean, like I'm just glad that honestly for me, like I'm glad that I learned what I did when I did because otherwise I would have spent basically the rest of my life just floating through, not figuring stuff out.
Oh
And
yeah. I mean,
like
there's
it is what it is, but like I've come to grasp with like that's gone. I've done it. It is what it is, and I'm gonna go forward. And
Yes, yes, it's
from
the
there, we do
whole,
what we do.
when the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, second best time is now.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I think about wraps that up. Um, so the final topic was fighting ESG, CEI lawfare versus boycotting as a strategy. So basically, the idea of this could be framed as, is boycotting just going to result in kind of the same ratcheting effect we've seen forever, where they put the pressure on and they relieve it up a little bit, put the pressure on, release it up a little bit, and
Most likely.
whereas the idea of trying to just use lawfare to purge ESG and the
Yeah.
CEI index and everything. And
Lindsay's got a lot of hot takes, and I'm not sure that I agree with
and
most of a lot of what he says, let's say, actually, honestly. He is a good, I think he's well intentioned. But I just like I agree to a certain extent, but who's gonna do it? That's the
no,
question.
and I mean, and
I,
I think there's
there's
like
typically never been any teeth to the boycotts. How about this? If you look at like Bud Light and Target right now, none of the boycotts that I can remember from the right side of the aisle have ever lasted this long or had this much impact,
yeah, no, I'm
which leads me to believe that this one could be different, right? Like this could be like you pissed off the wrong people and they are done, like done,
right.
DUN, done.
Sure. No, I think these boycotts are very I think that Budweiser is going to kill the Bud Light brand.
Yeah. And the good thing about the boycotts is that everybody can participate.
Sure.
Everybody on that is socially conservative can participate in that. And
Sure.
the
I mean, you
problem that I agree with him that lawfare needs to be done as well. I think it needs to be done in conjunction. But the problem that you're going to run into is who's going to do it?
well, and I think the sort of the comparison is like obviously this isn't a true choice one or the other, but the I guess the sort of the you know hypothetical choice here is if you had $10 or whatever used to buy a different beer versus $10 donating to a legal fund to fight this,
Hmm?
which would be better? Um, and the
Which would uh, w- which would be better? Most likely, lawfare. Lawfare would probably be better,
sure,
but um, like that's in an idealistic world, and I don't see that happening. Like the guy who's laying bricks all day and wants to have a beer after work, like he gets it to a certain extent, but it's like I only have $10 and I can buy beer and I just won't buy Bud Light because they
right,
offended me. Or I can not have beer and I can donate it to an organization to do lawfare against this stuff.
well, and that's I think
They don't see the value to their individual life in order to go that route. And the
right.
bigger thing from the right hand side of the aisle is the people who have like let's be real, the people who have and make money tend to be capitalists, which means they tend to be on the right hand side of the aisle. The problem is you don't ever hear about them. You don't know who they are because they stay in the shadows and they don't want to like they don't want the spotlight.
Well, I mean that's the only
And they're
reason
not
why.
willing to put their money where their mouth is or where their beliefs and truths are. And so you you get the people who are activists who do have money willing to fight the battles. And it's like, guys, if you're not willing to fight the battle, Like just concede the ground.
Yeah. No, I think there's some truth to that. I mean, I think it sounds like Lindsay's right though, that fighting lawfare would be far more effective than pushing these boycotts. It's just no one's doing that. There isn't a group you could go donate $10 to. You know, if your choice is I'm going to drive a minute farther this month to, that ultimately adds up to $10 in gas fees to go and not get Bud Light versus taking the $10 and donating it to a legal fund each month. Yeah, the $10 in the legal fund would probably, assuming that legal fund is actually being used for this, would probably be more effective. But what group?
Well, I haven't done any research on this. I'm trying to remember. I want to say there have been groups over the years that have done this, but eventually they burn out because nobody's donating.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure. But some of it is like I know of plenty of organizations that are fighting for gun rights,
Hmm.
but I donated to all of them. The ones that are actually fighting for gun rights, not the ones that start with an
Mm,
N and end with an
what?
A that don't.
What?
Um, you might have heard who I'm talking about. Yeah, the
Uh, I haven't, but that's okay. They're
probably
probably
better
not
that you
that
haven't.
significant.
They're increasingly less significant, thank
Yeah, I mean,
God.
I
But
hear I think I've heard of something like that used to be relevant, but uh, well, when the boomers were young,
yeah, it's a boomer thing.
and yeah, as the boomers start um,
Aging out.
aging out is a good term for that. Yeah, that organization is probably going to die.
Uh-huh. Gonna go the way of the boomer. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, like that's the thing is like where are these where's the anti-woke coalition for, you know, fighting back? Where is and actually I think I heard about something where I want to say Jordan Peterson's part of an anti-WEF group.
Hmm. He actually just
But
I think he
yeah, like he just started a
was,
coalition.
yeah, I think started it or was part of the founding group or whatever.
Right, right. I mean, no one person can just found one of these themselves easily. I think you
Unless you're
even need a board.
unless you're
But
George Soros. Hypothetically,
in Minecraft,
hypothetically,
right. That's anti-Semitic, Sean.
how is that anti-Semitic? He's a Nazi. He's a he's a Nazi collaborator.
He's Jewish, therefore
Self
that's anti-Semitic.
self-avowed Nazi
But
collaborator.
but but he's Jewish, so that's an anti-Semitic.
Is he Jewish? I mean, I think maybe he's
Are you
historically Jewish, or he
how
was
dare you
he was born into a
criticize
Jewish
his
family, but
Jewishness?
I would argue that if doing the things that he does, I would say are against Judaism and as such would make him not really a Jewish person. It's kind of like being a Catholic and diddling little kids.
Yeah, I I want to keep that bit up, but that last one hit home. So
Oh, I know. That stings,
no,
right? Like,
um, no, I completely agree. He's
yeah.
Jewish.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, adjacent, let's call it.
Well, I have a whole thing on the culturally Jewish but not religiously Jewish.
Well, I mean,
Which
and to be fair, like let's clip that one out of context real quick, and then we'll throw this in. But on the same, yeah, both getting canceled.
we
And
gotta get
there you go.
arrested.
So, but I also argue the same thing about Christians and Catholics. Like
Oh, 100%. I think that there's more of I
it's amazing to me how many, especially like Christians, sit there and start judging everybody around them. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did this, or can't believe you do that. Well, like one, you shouldn't be gossiping. Two, it's not your job to judge based on how they choose to live their life, as long as they're not like, if you want to say, like, you shouldn't really be judging, but like, you can make an observation of, hey, that's not, like, you're
Right.
not following the scripture, right? I don't think that's judging. That's saying,
Right.
hey, scripture says this and you're not following that. But to do that behind somebody's back or to other people rather than to confront that person individually, then you start getting into that territory. And it's amazing to me how many people do that. And I'm like, no, I, I'm not going to badmouth them, or I won't tell you anything that I haven't already said to their face of like, no, you,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's the judging people is definitely something I try not to do, like in that way. Like I need to make judgments about people and sort of the like their character is like this.
yeah,
So
but
I
that's,
know
I
how to.
mean, like trying to understand,
Yeah.
I don't see that as judging or making judgments. I think that's, you're playing with words, and yeah, that's technically true, but that's not the intent. The intent is to understand them and what their intentions are, so that you can, or what
Right.
their,
But
you know,
it blurs.
it can,
And I mean
and
for me I'm
and
looking internally and trying to make sure that I'm not erring.
yeah, I mean, and let's be clear, none of us are perfect, right? Like that's, but if you're trying to live a better life and you see yourself, like the fact that you're self-aware about it and you're trying to like identify it, and if you see it, try to stop yourself from doing it, that's a, I think that's it's a good attribute to do, right? Like that's okay, I'm aware of it, I see that it happens, and I'm trying to adjust my,
Sure.
behavior accordingly, rather than people who don't see an issue with what they're doing.
Well, and then this is kind of because we're talking about with problem with Christians who aren't that Christian is that yeah, as a Christian you're supposed to be like you're supposed to have that humility that says like I am not perfect and I need to be aware that I'm not perfect, accept that I'm not perfect and strive to do better. But that requires humility and self-awareness. Otherwise you'll get nowhere. And so many Christians are pompous, narcissistic. And I say Christians, right?
Right. Exactly.
They say they go to church and don't,
I mean,
and then
that's the point. Like that was the whole beginning of this discussion. Like I don't pull punches, right? Like if you're not following, like like I try to do better every day, but I fail,
one, and
right?
that's that was actually one of the things I was going to, that kind of leads into one of the things I was thinking about with the boycotting, was that the boycotting awakens people culturally.
Hmm.
And I know for me, paying attention to what was going on in the world coming brought me more back towards the church.
Right.
And I'm wondering if for a lot of people, waking up to what's going on and seeing how much other people have erred will awaken them to their own sort of wandering.
I think it very well could. Um, I think one of the problems that you have is that the church itself has strayed so far from its own teachings,
Oh God.
right? Like,
It's the more I look at, the more like I could go off on a whole thing about like what the church is doing wrong from a basic paradigm perspective and how they're doing things and why it won't work. But that basically means just yelling at the camera for the next half hour.
well, let's be real. I actually saw a really good meme the other day that uh, actually Poso, I think, posted it, and it said that that tolerance is not a Christian virtue,
Yeah.
right? Like tolerance is not that I'm aware of taught anywhere really in the book.
I mean, you could say that it is a sort of tertiary result of recognizing the imperfection of man, but
No, but that's not tolerating it. Tolerating is accepting that it is and it's not going to change.
well, and it's a little bit what I mean because you have to tolerate that people will be sinning.
Um,
that people are sinners, but
I think
there
that you
is
can, I think
that's a
that you can understand and accept the fact that people are sinners and still not tolerate it.
you should not tolerate sin. That is like the sin is. It's a distinctly Christian perspective, I think, but like the sin is unacceptable, sort of. Like
Right.
it is,
You can love the person and not love the sin, like the
right,
actions that they take. And you don't have
right.
to even tolerate or like you don't have to tolerate those things that they do, but you can still love them even though you don't tolerate or accept the things that they do, those sins that they commit,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And
Right.
it does teach, it does, I mean, like the Bible does teach love and, you know,
Right.
trying to get people to understand that, and that's why I say it's not like I agree that it's not tolerance because tolerance would be that this isn't going to change. The idea is that I understand
Yeah.
that it's a sin. You understand that it's a sin, and I'm not going to be accepting of that as an okay behavior. And I'm
But
not
it,
just going to.
yeah.
I'm gonna have to accept the fact that things like that are going to happen, but I'm not going to be accepting of that that's okay. And I
Yes.
think tolerance is acceptance of that as a social norm or
Right.
if that's okay, and that's not and
No.
I disagree.
In that sense, no. But it should be like it's tolerance in the sense that you may have to like you may have to put up with someone continuously sinning in the same way the entire duration of your life, and no matter what, like that, and you still need to try and kind of reach that person. Like that may still be the case, that they may not make that
Uh,
progress.
yeah, I mean,
Now
I would
it's
disagree to a certain extent,
I
but
it's more of a like it's the degree of sin that you're battling may be hard for like I'm just thinking of was it who was you talking about? It was a gay
here's
man that
here's the thing: is I would say I disagree, and I disagree basically on the effect of if like I I believe that you should be there and be um, as a as a resource for people who want to change, and you should try to talk to people and to preach even to people to
yes.
get them to understand that they need to change. But I also don't think that you should waste your time and effort on people that one don't see a problem their with their behavior because they will never change.
Well,
You can't get somebody to change that doesn't see a problem with their current with their behavior. Now, once they identify and they say, "Hey, I've realized now that this behavior is a problem," I think you should definitely be there for them to talk to, help, whatever,
yeah.
and say, "Yeah, you're right," and and like I'll help you work through that and move forward. But I don't think you should waste your talents in that way. There are plenty of people in the world that need help.
Yes.
Why would I
I'm
spend
inclined to agree.
like waste a ton of my time helping somebody who doesn't want to be helped?
I'm inclined to agree. There are aspects. I mean, and then there's some things like you'll be able to help them in some ways and not others. Is kind of what I'm also getting at. Like
Sure.
there's some aspects of the sin that they will continue to do and you will never be able to reach them on. Others you will be able to. That's more what I'm getting at. Um, but yeah, you shouldn't waste. You should, if there are other people you could be reaching, you should reach out to those people. Absolutely.
Right.
Um,
That's that's all. I mean, like if people are making progress, I'm okay with helping them,
sure.
right?
Absolutely.
But if somebody, it really goes back to if people don't see an issue with their behavior, if somebody who doesn't see an issue with their behavior, you're not going to change anything about them. You won't get them to do it until they determine that that behavior is bad.
Yep.
Like you'll
Yeah.
never get I had a buddy of mine that I had to cut loose because he was drunk. He was a drunk. Like, he just couldn't not be an
Yeah,
alcoholic,
I've had a few friends like that.
and
They
had to.
claimed that they wanted to stop, but every time I gave them an option to stop,
Mhm.
every time I said, "Do you want me to do this?" Like if you want me to, like if this is a you get angry and you throw like you yell at me to stop and you want me to ignore that and keep pressing, I will. But and he basically just said, "I want to stop, but I like." He started with saying, "I don't want to stop," or he started saying, "I want to stop," and then it was, "I don't want to stop that badly," which basically meant he wishes he would magically stop.
Right.
And so I basically just kind of cut him out of my life.
Yeah. Same.
I just kind of left him there and walked in the direction I was walking,
Right. You
which sucks, but
like I'm open to help, right? But I'm only going to help so much. You've got to help yourself.
sure. Well, and I think that's like yeah, the I think that there is, but that kind of goes to what I was saying about the progress. Um, that like as people wake up to this stuff, they start looking at it and they start going, "Oh, I see." Like they come closer to God, basically, to use the Christian parlance.
Sure.
Like they recognize you're right. Tolerance is not a Christian virtue. Like I I don't need to tolerate. I don't need to affirm these people's beliefs. What they're asking for is horrible. Now that I think about it, they're asking me to indulge them. That is very clearly a sin. Even if I don't believe that homosexuality is a sin, let's say, all of what they are doing, all of this other stuff is very clearly hedonistic indulgence, and that is three sins here. Like that is clearly a sin, and I don't. That is, you know. So I think it's
Sure.
they're recognizing that they're kind of they're being red pilled basically. They're kind of reforming their culture, and I think it's resulting in rekindling of cultural communities.
Yeah. Well, and back to the original that we were talking about, the lawfare versus boycotting. My expectation actually will be that within the next couple of years, one of two things will happen. Either you'll start seeing those types of um, organizations start popping up and doing that, or society collapses.
Well, and that's kind of what I was that, and that's yeah, I agree, and that's why
I
I was
think
thinking like the
I think that now
boycotts
that
are
people are waking up, they'll be much more like they realize, hey, we need to do something, but I can't do anything individually. But as a group, we have a much larger voice. Okay, well, let's become a group, and how do we do that? And so, like,
and that's
yeah, absolutely. I think there's some validity to that, to where you could actually build something uh, to do that lawfare. The other uh, portion of that is that you have to find lawyers that are willing to do it.
well, and
And unfortunately, a lot of them are
well,
not.
and if you can have judges in jurisdictions that you can elect, that's enough. Like if you control an electoral jurisdiction because of your community, you now kind of can get to set the laws, and you can elect the judges that you want. And that's why I'm wondering if the lawfare is sort of a stopgap measure in reality, and that boycotting is the only fight
To a certain extent,
because
because
it's
here's
sort
the
of
deal.
cultural jamming.
If you get if you get a conservative justice on the bench, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to rule for the law
Mm-hmm.
as it's written
Yep.
right down the line almost all the time,
Yep.
right? Whereas on the other side of things, if you have a judge that is an activist, that is a left side activist, they will they will I mean they will stretch heaven and earth to make up new stuff to say, oh yeah, well it reads this way to me. And I mean, it, the Alex Jones trial in Austin, Texas was an absolute perfect example of that, right? the judge wouldn't allow him to speak. You couldn't ask any questions. Like you basically gag ordered him, and then
How
was like,
is
"Yep, well, sorry."
how is that not a violation of his Fifth Amendment rights?
I mean, I think it absolutely should be. But you also have you have two grand juries in two different jurisdictions, one in Austin, Texas, and one in New York City,
Oh
who
yeah,
are who are who have allowed charges to go forward on individuals who were protecting themselves and or others.
yep, yeah,
How do
and
we
I
get to this point and expect that we can like that this is that something like this is where I disagree a lot of where I disagree with Lindsay about lawfare is because great it if you've got a judge that's willing to allow that to go forward or
well, and
is willing to act in the way that the judge did in Alex Jones's trial where it was blatantly one-sided, then what leads you to believe that you can win
well,
in a lawfare?
and I'm mostly ignoring that you and I agree that the justice system is in tatters right now.
Sure.
And kind of come from the idea of assuming the justice system is functional for the sake of argument, let's say. Because I think that the people pushing that are the ones that still believe in lawfare, and there's arguably a value to demonstrating how it doesn't work. Hold on, I'm getting spam, but what?
Why are you
Getting
talking about canned meats? So weird. That's a weird segue, bro.
I like canned meats. What can I say? It's a thing I like.
Sounds kind of
The
fruity.
prepper in me,
Is
but
it? I think it's maybe
it's
the
my
Yankee in
excuse. I'm
you.
sticking to it. I've actually never had ham spam. Um. Anyway, no, but like,
And I can see the argument if you use the premise that the justice system is still intact and it and that justice is blind and that it's fair for everybody. But if you believe that, like I got a bridge to sell you in Arizona that's got an ocean view.
it will any day now.
Any moment. Because I
You know,
mean, like
it's
we've
overdue according
seen
to some cycle
100 years
models.
overdue if you actually look back. It's wild.
Yeah,
People were claiming that the end of times was coming, global warming for forever, but
yeah.
and then
No,
they buy beachfront property. I don't know, it seems weird.
yeah.
Almost like they don't believe what they're preaching themselves.
Are you suggesting that these iconoclasts on the left would be dishonest at all?
I'm not suggesting anything.
Just merely posing the question.
I'm implying. And you're inferring. So whatever. Which
uh,
which one of us is worse?
yeah. No, I think though that there's a culture jamming aspect of lawfare though that I think is also worth considering. Where
Yeah. And again, like I think that we should have people from the right on the right that are doing that and the ones that have the funds to do it and to make that happen. Like one of the ones that I think should do it is Mike Liddell,
yes,
the My Pillow guy. Like he
he
makes a ton
might
of money.
he might be currently caught up in a bunch of lawsuits already though.
He very well may be, but like that that is somebody that
Well,
I expect. Like if you're gonna fight the culture war, I expect you to fight it on all fronts, and I'll back you on it. Like I'll help. Like
and there's a problem of when we're attacked, we get defensive instead of counterattacking. Right. So they're attacking Mike McDaniel with lawsuits. Well, why didn't he strike back in other areas as
sure,
well?
It's the same old trope of like, hey, you're a racist. No, I'm not. I'm not a racist. Why would you say that? Like, no. Look, turn at them and be like, no, you're the racist. Like, I don't see anything different between the people that are white, black, brown. Like, that makes no difference to me. You're the one that's saying that we should hire people based on the color of their skin, right? I
Right.
believe that makes you the racist. We should
Yep.
go on that attack, and we don't typically do
Oh
that.
yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we should be doing. We should be culture jamming, law jamming, and we need lawyers that are fucking warriors.
Right.
Not these lawyers like, oh gee, I don't know. I could like piss off a judge somewhere.
Right.
What if somebody looks at that and sees my name associated with it? And I just kind of whine, and they should be like, here's our strategy. Here they're attacking us. This is clearly a political attack, so let's
Bro.
attack them back.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. The lawyers on the other side of the aisle were literally willing to firebomb police vehicles in New York.
Yep.
Two attorneys.
Yep.
Seriously? Like, that's why you'll lose. Like, that's why you'll lose every time.
Yep.
That would be my argument. If I was arguing to James Lindsay and he's like, oh, we need to do lawfare. Dude, the playing field ain't the same. It ain't even. And I don't care what you think. If you think that that's the case, you're dumb. And at this point, we don't need to continue having the conversation because, like, I can see it. When I have two attorneys that suffer basically zero consequences,
They're still fully honored in their law, like by the justice
they
system
didn't
as
get
lawyers.
disbarred,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I would think that terroristic action maybe should maybe considerably qualify you for disbarment.
Except for the New York is disbarring or disbarred. I can't remember if they actually did it. Rudy Giuliani, just
Right. Right. It's one thing if they said like,
because he
no,
was
no.
acting and doing things within the law in in courtrooms, like in court,
Right.
he's fighting things through the way that he's learned and known to do, and they're trying to disbar him or did disbar him. I can't even remember offhand because of that, and that's okay. And he's just filing lawsuits and working on behalf of his client.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
but the two
there's.
lawyers who are firebombing police vehicles, they're not disbarred. Nah,
I
you're
mean,
not serious. You don't
there,
have a
there's
serious justice system.
there's an argument that says that somebody just because someone commits a crime doesn't mean they should lose all certification unrelated to that crime, I guess. But
Disavow.
I mean, I
Absolutely
would
disagree with you.
I would say that,
If
well,
you're an
like I would.
electrician or a plumber and you have that certification, ag agreed, right? But you commit a felony as an attorney, as a licensed attorney,
Sure. No,
done.
I'm part of this is I'm imagining what's going to be a felony in 3 years. If the left gets their way, what we've done just now would be a felony. Like what we said on this podcast would probably be a felony.
Sold. Deal.
So,
Your terms are
um,
acceptable.
no, I'm inclined to agree. Like as a lawyer, you should be held to a higher standard. That's like I'm inclined to agree that terrorist acts should
Well,
probably qualify. But
yeah, like, and let's go some different route, right? Let's say like if you're a doctor and you murder somebody, can you still perform as a doctor?
if you just like murdered somebody in their home with a gun, I don't think they tend to take away your medical license for that. I don't know if that we could get into
I'm
whether or not
just
they should, but I don't think they tend to.
right. I'm just saying like there's a difference between like uh, m- I think I personally I think they should, right? If you're a doctor and it's like
I
being
mean,
if you're a doctor
you
and
took an
you're
oath
in
to
it,
do no harm, so
right, and you did harm.
yes,
So we now know that you're a liar. So what makes you believe that you can still stick with like, yeah, I mean, it's just like it's just like if you're a cop and you lie about something on the stand, right? Like you arrest somebody wrongly, very clearly wrongly, and then you lie about it.
Oh, as a police officer,
You should,
I think,
like, as far as I'm concerned, you should never be able to be a peace officer of any kind anywhere. Like your certification should get pulled. Sorry,
yeah, yeah.
done.
Like if you blatantly lie on the stand to infringe on somebody's rights, you have no right being a police officer.
Right.
None.
Deal.
Like just like I would like to see, and if I mean, frankly, I would like to see if you're a police officer and you have a uh just a habit, some like continual or blatant violation of people's civil rights, you should not be allowed to be a cop again. Go find a different profession at the very least.
I mean, eh, right. And I agree with you. I would in that, like, part of that needs to be that it has to be provable, right?
Right.
It can't just be allegations because there's a lot of cops that get a lot of false allegations on them. Let's be
Oh, sure.
clear.
No, but with
But there's
the
also plenty of cops that do exactly what you're saying and stay on the force and shouldn't. I
yes.
happen to know one. I like was a hothead before he went to be a cop, had no business being a cop because I knew it was going to happen. And in the first probably 2 years, 3 years that he was a cop, had several
Right. Right.
people that had several allegations, and I don't know what ever came of
Oh
that.
yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent there. But I also
Right.
think that, like, if you're a cop and you get caught breaking the law, right? If you
Yeah.
commit a felony as a cop,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
can't be a cop anymore.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry.
I mean, it like obviously, oh, you're speeding. That's not grounds. But yeah, you felony. Yeah. What under what for what reason can you justify being a cop? Now
Like
there may
I've
be
seen
arguments of certain felonies not being quite up to snuff, but
doesn't matter. I disagree because I don't think it matters.
I
You went
think
into the profession knowing what the law was, and
yeah,
you chose to willfully violate that.
yeah, that's a fair yeah. No,
There's
I'm
been
with you.
plenty of stories, and now I'm not saying that this is super prevalent, but there's been enough stories out there of cops who, like, beat their wives, right? That's domestic
Right,
abuse, and even if you
right,
don't say
and
it's
if
domestic abuse, that's assault with bodily injury,
sure,
right?
and you're a cop,
Sorry,
so
and you're
who's
a
she
cop,
going to go to?
right? Unacceptable.
You have shown yourself not to be a worthy police candidate.
Well, I mean, look at the cop that was the what was it? The female cop that was up in Tennessee. They got caught hooking up with, like, the entire police force, and they had to fire 8 out of the 10 people on the police force. That's just
Yeah,
within the like last 6 months
I
or
mean
something.
that's just I mean that's more of a
I
dereliction
mean,
of duty thing,
it's an issue of morality, clearly. But I mean,
right? But
adultery's a crime.
is it
Yeah,
okay?
and she's married.
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't
think
know how many
adultery
of
was
the
a
other ones
crime.
are
Yeah,
married.
I mean, but the fact, like, but some of it that happened on duty.
That's a moral failure in a an egregious sense. But yeah, it definitely happened on duty at several occasions, which means that's theft of time because you're on the clock.
That's why I said a dereliction of duty. So
And yeah, there's lots of different items there. As far as I know, none of them had their certifications pulled to where they
I'm not,
can't be a
I'm,
peace officer.
see, I'm not even sure how much there are certifications you can clearly pull to prevent someone from being a peace officer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I thought it was like more
You have to
department by department.
you have to go to academy, and you have to have, like, certified to be a peace officer.
Yeah, I thought it was just, you just had to graduate the academy, but
Right. But I mean, like
Like,
I know,
like,
how about this? I know of occasions where they have pulled their certifications to where somebody
oh, okay.
couldn't ever be a peace officer again.
Yeah, I want to see that. Frankly, I'd like to see that more than jail time for a lot of this stuff.
I'm not saying that
But
like I think you have whatever outcomes you have from whatever you did, right?
oh, sure,
You have whatever, but because you're a peace officer, whether
right.
that's
Oh no, it's we
city,
should
state, federal, I don't care what,
they should be held to a higher standard.
you're held to a higher standard. There, like if I get in trouble and I go, oh, well, I didn't know, you know what the response is going to be? Ignorance is no excuse of,
Right. So what about the police that are ignorant
so,
of the law and then break and then
right.
violate my rights as a result of that? Huh?
So
Huh?
why do I not get the benefit of the doubt, but they do?
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Like it's
So,
yeah, and if you repeatedly violate someone's civil rights that because ignorance, I don't care. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting
yeah.
worked up. Seen way too many videos recently of cops just like not realizing the guy had a camera on him or if the house had a camera. He's just being fuck.
Well, I
But
mean, in fairness, a lot of academies and a lot of like continuing education courses teach them a lot of these strategies, but don't seem to teach them how to identify when somebody's asserting their rights and that you need to see like notice that they're asserting their rights and like you have to draw a line, right? You can't overstep that just because you're a cop. Like that's not a
right, right,
thing.
right.
It's amazing how many guys you know, what is it like the cop watch or audit the police or any of those that like literally go do constitutional checks, essentially, is I think what they call them, on different police departments to see if they're going to violate their civil rights.
Right.
Like, well, you
Well,
can't
and
film here. Yeah, I can. I'm in a public area. Well, yeah,
yeah.
but you're filming that. So
So,
Supreme
right,
Court says I can.
right, right. Well, and there's the yeah, like the I mean, you violate the civil rights. It's your responsibility to know that. Oh, the academy or whoever told you wrong. Great, sue them.
Right,
Sue them for a lifetime of wages you will now no longer be able to earn because they taught you wrong.
right. Absolutely.
Like, do it. Get a class action lawsuit. Oh, they'll be shut down. Yeah, they will. And then no one will ever do that shit again.
Right.
Good. But then what we do for cops? No, I don't know. Hire people that aren't going to do that shit.
Protect yourself.
Like, well, then who will be? We can't find cops. Have you tried paying more?
What do you need to pay more for?
If they can't find
Go
cops?
enroll in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu class and learn how to like handle
Right.
yourself, and then go enroll in some firearms courses and learn how to protect
Sure.
yourself.
Sure. I'm talking about like the city saying we can't find cops.
Not my problem.
Yeah. I mean, that's like that's kind of what I meant by I don't know. Have you tried paying more?
Cool city, you don't need any cops anymore because everybody's able to protect themselves.
Oh, sure. Yeah. If you're an individual, like, yeah, you're now you don't have cops violating. Would you rather have cops violating your
Or
rights?
or better yet, since you can only find half the number of police that you had previously, you can now pay them double.
Yes.
Guess what? As long as you're paying them well, I bet they don't like here's the deal. People tend to not F up good jobs that they make good money at
Yeah.
when they know that like if Fort Worth's paying 150K a year and Dallas is paying 75, nobody in Fort Worth's going to screw up their job because they know like there's a dude that they can easy commute. He lives in Dallas and he'd
Right.
be like, "Oh, he didn't want that job anymore. I'll take it. Yeah, thanks."
Yeah,
right? Like they'll step up and be like, yeah, I'll do it.
absolutely. Easy. No, I don't think it'd be hard to do. I mean, I think you if you
And let's
paid
be
more
clear, I
than
think those numbers are excessive, but
they might be about what they should be, but well,
150K.
I mean, if you like you'd have to change a lot for so many ways, it's hard to say. Like it wouldn't look like anything you see, right? It wouldn't look like what you look at right now. So,
Yeah, I mean,
but
maybe.
yeah, I mean, I think that given the level of like some
I
of
think the
these,
I think the bureaucrats should get paid less so
yes,
that officers and good teachers get
yes,
paid more,
yes, I
right?
think I think that there should be lots of extra skills that police officers can get, and the more skills they get, the more that allows them to take on the jobs that pay better,
Right.
right? You know, uh, like BJJ, like that. There's like there
Of
could
course,
be easily.
I also think, and I've espoused this before, that anybody who is in the military, anybody who is in as a firefighter, anybody who's a police officer, all need to do an annual physical fitness test
Yep.
to a serious standard.
Yes.
Pick one out historical somewhere, probably in the 70s or 80s,
Hmm.
and they have to complete that. If they don't, like, then you get put, you know, not necessarily on suspension or on leave, but you're like
You're on
probation.
desk duty. Yeah, yeah, you're back on probation. You
Like
need to.
you can have levels. You can have probation, then you have desk duty, and then you have suspension, and then you have termination, right? Like there's steps to this,
Right.
but like you we one of the things we need to do is eliminate like morbidly obese people in these roles.
Yes. Yes. People that cannot do the job required.
Sure.
Like they're but you see these guys that have been at forever that are just like
Mhm.
the gear barely doesn't really fit around them anymore. But because they haven't had to actually go fight a fire in 20 years. But just now it happened to be this small station finally something caught on fire and now they need to get to work and they're huffing and puffing and they can't fucking keep up.
I mean, you could hypothetically have an event in Canada go awry and then have to call all hands on deck to put out the fire, hypothetically.
But that could have happened to any celebration of female firefighters.
It could have, it didn't. It happened to a specific one in Canada.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's
When you're doing a controlled burn to show off your skills and it
the
becomes
reality is
a no longer
that
controlled burn.
like the fact that a controlled burn, you're practicing controlled burn in fairly controlled and ideal conditions, right? You're not doing this when the winds are swirling or anything like that's bad. You know where you're gonna do it. You have it planned well in advance. You could have choppers on standby. All sorts of stuff could be happening. There
I,
should be no reason it should ever get out
I,
of control.
but I, mm, I would tend to agree with you, but that's not what happened.
Like you could have it where there's a training day for a tanker crew to practice filling up the tanker truck, the tanker plane or whatever. And oh, if they have to, they'll drop. Hell, you could just that could be the training is a tanker plane is to come in and put the fire out.
Or, or you could not and turn a controlled burn into a raging wildfire.
I guess that is an alternative.
It is an alternative.
I'm not sure I like that alternative.
Didn't say you would. Not saying
Is
I
this
like that
the,
alternative, but
I mean, I feel like they're getting with the own nothing happening. What about the be happy part of that? I'm not feeling the happy.
the happy was a lie, sir.
Tolerant, or was it indifference is the new happy?
Mm, ouch.
It's just suddenly get to suddenly feels really true, doesn't it?
Oh,
Because you're feeling increasingly more indifferent.
oh no, I've always been indifferent. It's okay,
You don't think it's increasing?
bro.
You're just perfectly indifferent.
I'm a ginger. I'd have to have a
I
soul
mean,
first.
if you say so, I don't know what it's like to not have a soul. You tell me.
Like an elevator. It has its ups and downs. And there's your dad joke for today. You're welcome. Thanks. I'll be here all week. You're
You
regretting
have
this,
to.
aren't you? Well, you know, it was even better that you didn't get it. Since you were like the confused look on your face, you're like,
Like,
what? What are you talking about? How's elevator? It was like an ah, frick. I walked straight into that one.
oh,
I appreciate
it
it.
would have hurt less to walk into an actual door.
Mm, it's fair.
On
Seems
that
like a
note,
it seems like a good place to
I
end
think
this
it's a
one.
good place to wrap things up.
Nice.